Hello, this is Mad Cat, the angry egalitarian. And today I have a very, very special episode. Not a snowflake special, but special nonetheless. Not only do I have Hannah Wallen back on my show, it's been at least a year since I've last had her on, but here she is. She's here. I'm touching her. Oh, wait, I'm not supposed to touch her.
I think I'll live. I think I'll live.
All right. So I've known Hannah for about 2 years now. I met her when I first became a honey badger, or when I snuck into the honey badgers, and they're just like, okay, I guess he's with us now. I don't know. But she was also an early fan of mine, which I'm like, really? All the great personalities out there, and you're a fan of me?
Well, then you also have to admit that I kind of drafted you into the honey badgers.
No, that was Brian.
Well, not as a writer.
Touche. Yeah, for those who don't know, Hannah Wallen is a honey badger, one of the original honey badgers, original 3. She is also the editor for Honey Badger. All the articles you read, she has to put her stamp of approval on before they get published, and has really pushed for me to write articles. Even after the fact that I left the Honey Badger, she still has me write articles every now and then. So, would you like to say anything more than that about yourself?
Not about myself, no. But there's a good reason why I keep asking you to write for the honey badgers. I mean, you do good analysis, very good analysis of things. So I need people that do that. I need writers that. I can't do that all myself. It wouldn't just be the editor, then I would be the blogger. So, of course I'm going to keep asking you to write.
And are there any other writers you want to shout out from who do good work?
Yeah, actually, I've been greatly appreciated. Actually, I don't know if I got to look and make sure I'm giving the names that they write under and not the names that they're on Skype under. So I'm going to look on the actual blog, but I can start with El Rattel, simply because I know that's the name that he goes under. Does a lot of our translation. And then also, I've been really happy with some of the things that Dean Esme has written for us. Been very happy with, of course, everything that the other Badgers have written. We've got Kukuruyo doing some great comics. Let's see what else we've got here. If I click on Team Badger like a visitor, I can nag Karen because she hasn't written anything in a long time. But and I can maybe nag Yule because he hasn't either. We've got Observing Libertarian, who writes quite a bit for us. We got a lot of people who haven't made Team Badger profiles. Let's see.
That's my keyboard.
Yeah, I keep doing that.
Keyboard, mine, yours, mine, yours.
No, I'm taking your keyboard. It's nicer than mine.
Yeah, it is. It has a nice chrome finish to it. So.
Yeah. Mine's old, and we're not going to talk about where it came from. It didn't come from the company that it was manufactured by. We'll just leave it at that.
Okay, moving on.
Let's see. Now, if I go through and just start looking at posts, we have. I'm going to make sure he's under his real name. Why am I in videos? God damn it.
So now you learn the sad truth about Hannah. She doesn't know how to use technology.
Yeah, it switched before I clicked. Here we go. But I've had a great deal of writing done. We've got some posts about once a week by he is under Alex Tinsley, who's been writing about game games and gaming issues, and doing pretty good criticism of Anita Sarkeesian's bullshit. And he has an article up right now, Why the Mainstream Media Actually Fears Gamers. A great article. And then I've also got letters from people who have written to us, numerous letters from people who have written to us. Here we have a previous article by Adam, who just goes by Adam, 480 sexual assaults at the Men's Rights Conference, which was hilarious. And I had to clean my keyboard because I was drinking coffee when I started reading it, which was a bad idea. So we got a lot of great writers. You know, I would ask everybody to take a look and go through and just check everybody out.
All right. So the 480 sexual assaults, that was in relation to London. What was the men's conference like? Because during it, those of us on Facebook, A Voice for Men, you know, got shut down by Facebook itself. So it was like almost a media blackout. None of us really knew what was going on. And even now, there's still some of us who really doesn't know what happened during the conference. It sounded like a lot of fun.
All of the videos from the conference are going up. I think they're all up now on Steve Brulet's channel. And you can also find those on A Voice for Men. So if you go to avoiceformen.com, you'll find in A Voice for Men's hot links, you'll find Steve Brulet's channel with the videos from that. There'll also be pictures on that. National Coalition for Men has it up on their site. So all of the information from the conference, you can actually see that. But there has been kind of a media blackout. They don't really like to talk about us because we're not the evil men's rights activists that they pretend that we are. It's very hard to demonize people while they're talking about human rights without proving yourself to be a liar if you actually show what they're doing. So we saw very little coverage. Now, there was some coverage, I think, in the Guardian or maybe the Daily Mail. There were a couple of people that showed up there. But we're really waiting to see more coverage. And we're not holding our breath. The conference itself went great. There were a lot of great speakers. There were a lot of people who you got to meet a lot of people that were not speakers that had a lot to say. And everybody was really wonderful. Meeting everybody was really wonderful. So I don't know if you have another question.
Well, I remember from the first men's conference, which I believe was in Chicago or Detroit?
Detroit.
There was a lot of press there. Not a lot of press, but there was press there. You got interviewed. A few other people got interviewed. And then they kind of twisted the words around of what y'all said. But was there any press there this time? And did you talk to any press?
There was. There were a few reporters there. And one of them, I don't know if he was freelance or if he was there with a publication. But we looked at a lot of his stuff, and it was very well thought out. It wasn't slanted one way or another. It wasn't necessarily slanted in our favor either. It just wasn't slanted against us. And then there was another one who worked, I keep thinking it was a Daily Mail, that she knew Aaron. And so it was more of a trustworthy situation where we knew even if she wasn't going to be, particularly nice, she wasn't going to deliberately be biased against us either. And that's really all that we want as a group is fair coverage. We don't necessarily have to get any kind of special treatment. We don't have to be handled with kid gloves, but we would like to be dealt with fairly and honestly. And it's true. A lot of the media that we dealt with last year or 2 years ago at Detroit were inherently dishonest, especially Jeff Charlotte. I keep wanting to call him Charlotte. I think it's Charlotte from GQ. He flat out lied in his article. It wasn't even misinterpretation of words. He not only flat out lied in his article, but he got pictures of staff edited to make them look malevolent. And they were really badly edited pictures. I mean, if I was doing photographs for an article and they came out like that, I'd be humiliated. So that was a really bad situation. And that was one where it's not so much that we trusted the press, to have integrity and everything. But we had hoped that there would at least be some press that would be honest enough, that press that was dishonest would be too embarrassed to be that blatantly dishonest. And of course they weren't.
So what was like the overall message of this conference? I mean, everyone was speaking about something different, but was there like a common theme to what they were speaking about? Or was it just like people saying what was important to them? So it was kind of like a little of everything.
Well, I guess you could say the overall message was drawing attention to, raising awareness of, and building an understanding of men's issues and sort of how they interact with human rights issues in general. Pointing out that, there is a legal issue behind a lot of men's issues, and pointing out that one of the big hurdles that we face, even though men's issues isn't a response to feminism, a lot of feminists will say that it is a response to feminism, that there is a men's rights movement, but feminism isn't the problem. It's sort of the armed guard that stands in front of the problem and goes, you can't fix this without getting through us first. And so, we talked about things like that. We've talked about not only the problems that we face fixing the issues, but what steps need to be taken to fix the issues, what the nature of those problems are, not just this is going on, but sort of the underlying things behind it, the cultural issues, just a little bit of everything. So because we're in the early stages of bringing awareness to the greater community, the greater world community, and so on. And it's kind of hard to make any headway until we do that. And so we kind of need to be able to do things like this in order to get people to a greater understanding of not just what the issues are, but why the issues are, and how they're continuing to be what they are, and what it's going to take to actually fix them.
So I do want to say, anyone who's watching now, feel free to say something in the chat. Those who are regularly on my channel, I love to interact with, they know that I love to interact with people in the chat. But me and Hannah are both looking at the chat right now. So if something comes up there, if you have a question for her, we're going to see it, and we'll be more than happy to answer it. So any and all questions you have for Hannah, well, she'll answer most of them. I'm sure there's some she won't answer.
Well, or you might get a smart ass answer.
So who were some of the speakers present at the conference?
Oh, well, actually, one of the funniest ones was Janet, because she was nervous before speaking, and then she came out.
She was nervous?
Yeah, she was nervous, and then she came out and she just killed it. You couldn't tell at all. I think everybody was a little nervous. Sage, of course, was there. I don't know if everybody remembers the KSU men debacle, where Sage was pretty much attacked by his own university, which is always a great thing to do to a student at your university. But he was there to speak. Let's see, who else was there? There was, of course, you asked me names, I'm not going to remember them. But Paul was there. Erin Pitsey started it off with a bang. She was great. We had Mark Pearson, who has been through, a hell of an event. He was falsely accused of all things of sexually molesting someone in public. And it was demonstrably false. It wasn't just a false accusation. You could actually see on video that it hadn't happened. And he was still put through an entire.
Was that the guy at the subway station?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And I can't remember the actress's name. She's got if I remember right, she's got a weird name. She's that actress from that show that I don't watch.
Well, you'll have to tell me what the show is.
I can't think of the name of that either.
Well, can you describe the show?
It's extremely popular, and all of your favorite characters die in it. That's the
Walking
reputation.
Dead?
No, not the
Game of
Walking Dead.
Thrones?
Yes, Game of Thrones. That's
Well,
it.
I don't know anyone that Polaris
I know.
just told us it's Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, yeah.
Well, if you know who the actress is, Polaris, please let us know. But
yeah, because she really deserves to have her name out there associated with what she did.
what
Honestly.
did she do?
She made a blatant false accusation against a guy, against Mark Pearson. He bumped into her in the I think it was a bus station, not a subway. But he bumped into her in the bus station, just barely brushed past her. And she accused him of an act that would have taken like 13 seconds for him to perform. He went by her in the course of like 2 seconds. And, it was physically impossible. And she continued to push the accusation. She continued right through an investigation and arrest. He was dragged out of his house in the middle of the night for this. And so, yeah, if we can get her name associated with that everywhere, I think that would be the right approach to dealing with a false accusation like that, especially from somebody famous.
But remember, we live in a rape culture where we celebrate rapists, and we don't ever believe a woman when she claims to have been raped, even though this person, the police should have looked at the video evidence first and like, wait a minute, how in this 2-second time gap was this even possible for everything you've described? But instead decided, oh, she must be telling the truth because listen and believe, and arrested the guy.
I'm not sure. I'm looking at the list.
Elise Williams sounds...
I don't think it was her. It was an older woman, if I remember right. And I don't want to associate it with the wrong actress because that's the same thing. That's a false accusation also.
All right, so while she's looking that up, no, it's great that you had him there because, I mean, we need to, there it is, Sawad Ferris.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce that. I don't know how to pronounce that name, but I think it's Sawad Ferris or Ferris or something like that. And she is the one that made the false accusation.
Okay, and what was it that he spoke about at the conference? Was it just his experience?
Yeah, he described his experience in pretty good detail, as good a detail as he could without giving her name, because he's legally not allowed, even though it was proved that he could not have done what he was accused of doing. She's still under legal protection. So he is legally barred from releasing her name. And the media is legally barred in the UK from releasing her name. But American media is not under that law. And so I think we should release her name. So that name again was, it's spelled Souad, which I think is Suad, and Fares, Faress. And I'd like to see that shouted to hills. Suad Fares is a false accuser, and she actually may have gotten money for making a false accusation. So, but aside from
as so many false accusers tend to do.
Yeah, well, there's actually a setup in Canada that there's a victims fund, I guess, and even if your accused, molester, rapist, whatever, is acquitted, you still get money. You don't have to pay it back. So it really kind of encourages false accusations. It's one of many things it does.
Yeah, I've been seeing this with National Organization of Women given an award to Aaron Sokowitz, and seeing things like that they still believe that Jackie from U of E was actually still a rape victim, despite all evidence otherwise. And yeah, it really seems like there's a strong encouragement to women to say, hey, you can accuse someone, get popular for it, get money for it, and even get an award for it just for lying about something. But, the nice thing is that now we're starting to see in the news women who admit to falsely admitting rape, starting to get some jail time, but still nowhere compared to what the men would have faced had they been served out their sentence.
Yeah. There is another, I'm not going to go through all of the speakers, but there's another speaker that I want to mention because of that. And I couldn't remember his name, is Professor Martin Evison. He talked about he talked about ideology as a threat to due process and the presumption of innocence. This is an issue that's been a real strong point with me throughout my men's rights activism, because I have had friends, plural, actually multiple, who have faced serious due process issues. I wrote about one because his case was actually documented enough that I was able to go through and recount everything from beginning to end without leaving anything out or remembering anything incorrectly. I also had him to talk to and everything. But I've got another friend that's still going through it. My friend that I wrote about, his case was about 7 years long before his attorney finally filed successfully a vexatious litigation case against the accuser. And so at the end of that 7 years, when that accuser was found to be a vexatious litigant, not just on the basis of that case, but other things that she was doing as well, including to her own grandmother, that case went on for 7 years. I've got another friend that's been going through it for about 15 years, and it's nonstop. He literally had to move away from the area to protect himself from his accuser. I've had a friend go to jail for his ex-girlfriend saying she was afraid of him after she broke his wrist and his skull. I have had a friend get convicted of assault for putting his fists up to stop a woman from trying to stab him a second time in the throat. And the judge basically said he was too rough with her because when he put his fists up, he clocked her in the jaw. And even though he didn't do any damage, there was no bruising, there was no actual punch, because if he'd really hit her, he'd have knocked her out. He was too rough. She wasn't too rough stabbing him in the throat with a pencil. That's no big deal, But he was too rough putting his fists up and coming into contact with her jaw. And this is getting to the point where it's not just ridiculous, it's dangerous. We're taking people out of the community who are great people in the community. We're hurting people without respect to their humanity as a society just because they are men. And we're taking away their right to be treated as human individuals with human rights, including a right to not be railroaded in the court system just because they are men and just because women claim to be scared.
I sort of, very, very minor, experienced something like that growing up. I was dating this girl for a couple of months when we came back from Christmas vacation, and she broke up with me. I think she was only dating me just so I would take her to the dance and give her a Christmas present, basically like a Christmas relationship. But anyways, okay, we went our separate ways. That was that. And I moved on. Except she didn't. She started to spread a rumor around that I had abused her during our relationship. And she even confronted me before school with some of my friends and started talking about how I abused her. And one of my friends grabbed me by the shirt and raised his fist ready to punch me. All because, he was triggered. I mean, he had dealt with, his mother being abused and him feeling powerless to do anything about it. So when he heard her, he was just immediately triggered and he was ready to punch me. And she sat there while it was happening. And I think that she was wanting it to happen. She wanted me to get hurt, even though it was completely false. And the only thing I did was just stay there, because I felt that if I had tried to punch him or tried to defend myself, in his mind would have confirmed what he believed of her lie. So I just stood there. Mm-hmm. And I just showed no aggression whatsoever. And eventually he stepped down. I guess at that moment he realized that I couldn't have done that. And I don't really hold it against him too much, and maybe I could, but I mean, she had a responsibility in that situation. She's lying about it, but she was about to witness me get punched. And, it's nowhere compared to what any of the people that you've experienced have faced, but it's along the same lines.
It's quite comparable in its own way. This is one of the reasons why I say a false accusation is a violent crime. It's not, it doesn't have to be a directly violent crime. You don't have to walk up to somebody and hit him in the face if you can get somebody else to do it for you. It's still your violence. If you are just the same thing as you would get convicted of conspiring to commit murder if you hired a hitman. If you use your, I don't know, your gender, if you use your society's gynocentrism to get someone else to engage in violence on your behalf, you are acting in violence. And that's basically what happens with false accusations. Because men who are subjected to false accusations, even if they don't go through what Mad Cat went through, they still face other repercussions that are violent. They may be arrested, they may be thrown in jail, they will have things forcibly taken away from them. If they go to court, they're going to be fined and they're going to pay court costs, so their property is going to be confiscated. They're dealing with quite a bit. And, of course, the woman just walks away from the whole situation unscathed, especially if she's making a blatant false accusation as opposed to misinterpreting something that has occurred. Like a lot of women think that they have the right to hit a guy and expect to not be hit back. So they don't consider their initial slap or their initial push or getting up in his face and nagging at him until he can't take it anymore. They don't consider that a violent act. But if the guy puts his hands up and shoves him away, or if he hits back, or if he even just puts his hands up to block, that they will consider a violent act, even if it's less violent than what they were doing. So yeah, false accusation is always a violent act.
So Polaris 589, always good to see you, sir, has said, "Hold on, guys, I need to use the restroom. Don't say anything important till I get back." So what about them Browns?
Well, since Polaris is molesting the restroom, did you get consent from the restroom before you used it like that? I'm sure it's going to feel terribly, terribly abused. You have to be kinder to your restroom than that. It's just definitely not right. Admitting in public too that he's just going to use it. Are you going to throw it away when you're done, or are you going to call it the next day?
I have nothing to add to that.
Of course, he's not going to answer us because he's in there abusing his poor, innocent bathroom.
Well, it's male privilege. We just use the bathroom and, oh, I hear so many. Every time the bathroom issue comes up, I always hear the same thing, which always, I don't know why it shocks me so much. And maybe this kind of speaks onto, with the court system and always believing women. But one of the, what did I miss? Well, we accused you of raping the bathroom. That's what you missed. But I always hear about how bad women are with the bathroom and how disgusting a bathroom is when women use it. And yet we're as men, we're led to believe that we're really the disgusting ones. I hear such horror stories.
Yeah, I've told a few of those myself. I used to work in a gas station. I went from a professional environment to retail. So it was kind of culture shock there. And we used to have a lady that came into our restroom at the gas station where I worked that we called Picasso. You can imagine why we called her Picasso.
I'm trying not to, but go on.
And it wasn't even like creative. She would just smear on the wall, oh, hey, look, we go into the bathroom and there's poop on the wall. It made you really grateful when you're cleaning the restroom that there was a drain in the floor. So I could just take sanitizer water in there and dump it on the wall until the poop was gone. But women can be very vindictive too. If the trash can's too far away from the toilet, you go in and you find sanitary napkins. Sanitary napkins have something sticky on the back. They have glue on the back, so they stick to your underwear. And women will plaster them on the wall, or they'll stick them in the sink if the sink's by the toilet and trash can is, 2 or 3 feet away. And especially in a restroom, like in a gas station bathroom, you don't have stalls necessarily with little waste baskets up on the wall for the sanitary items. You have a toilet and a sink, and then over by the door or someplace farther away from the toilet, there's usually a standing trash can, and that's where you find, or people will put sanitary napkins that are not flushable in the toilet, and then you have to clean them out of the toilet and deal with somebody's bodily fluids. So yeah, men in the restroom aren't that bad. We had a few men pee on the wall after the urinal was taken out in protest of having the urinal removed, which it was removed for the reason of we were next to a junior high, so we had boys come in that misused the urinal, and of course we had people come in that smoked in the restroom, even though they weren't supposed to, and we'd find cigarette butts in the urinal.
That always confounded me. I used to go to strip clubs and I would see the same thing, and I'm like, you realize that you both touched your penis and touched your mouth to smoke.
Yeah.
Or at least I imagine they did, but
Well, I'm practical about smoking. I do not understand why it is attractive to anybody as an idea to light something on fire and then stick it in your mouth and suck on it. That just makes no sense to me.
I do the same thing with a marshmallow. I set it on fire and then I put it in my mouth.
Well, yeah, but I put it out first.
Oh, that makes so much more sense.
It's not smoking. It's not, noxious fumes aren't coming out of it anymore. It's just cooked. You cook things and eat them, that's one thing, but to set something on fire and then while it's still on fire, I'm going to stick that in my mouth. That just makes no sense to me. I'm confused.
So taking a few comments from the chat. Polaris says that the bathroom was asking for it.
Yeah.
Did you see how it was dressed? Joe Kim, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Live with Hannah Wallen. What a treat. Well, let's see.
Yeah. Your fingers are in the wrong spot to find a pulse. You have to be farther towards the edge.
She's a medical professional, so
of the lowest caliber.
she's ruining the joke. She's explaining it. It's like, you're ruining it. Okay. Polaris, I used to work for McDonald's. Someone pooped on the walls on the floor. On the floor. Sorry, it's far away.
Yeah.
Missy J, good to see you. I don't miss working at the gas station. Yeah, she has a few stories about the gas station. Since I've been in Dayton, she's like, oh, we need to see each other. We need to see each other. You need to come over. And it's like, okay, only the exact opposite. I was the one saying, we need to see each other. And she's like, if we see each other, do you promise to stop harassing me? I'm like, yes. So Polaris, that's why we should have segregated bathrooms. We shouldn't have to use the same restroom as those lady savages.
I really agree. I think it's a not fair to men for women. Women go into the men's restroom all the time too. Like anytime you're at a gathering or an event, and there's a line in front of the women's restroom because women take forever in the restroom. There's no line in front of the men's restroom. Women start going into the men's restroom. Like they'll walk in there even if there's urinals, so men are going to be standing in there with no privacy whatsoever, and women will walk right in and they just act like it's no big deal for them to be in the men's restroom. But if a man were to go into the women's restroom, all the women in there would have a cow and start yelling pervert and masher and rapist and all kinds of other stuff. And of course, the thing that he would be exposed to is not just, the threats and everything. He'd also have to deal with the mess that women leave in the restroom.
And then probably all the women blame that one man for the mess.
Yeah, well, it's kind of hard for women to blame a man for leaving tampons laying around on the floor. Because they missed the trash can, by like 6 feet.
So, Polaris has made a suggestion to Missy J, which is a suggestion for you. And as someone who knows Missy J, I will speak for her because I'm a man and she's a woman. Would you like to be on Ladies on Topic? It's a show with
Sure.
Missy J and NC Clark. And I've been on it, even though I'm not a lady, but it's a fun show. So
Yeah, I would have no problem with that. I don't know what the show is, though.
it's
I'm
just
sorry
women
about that.
talking about it's Ladies on Topic. Have not a lot of mystery there.
Yeah, I would be happy to.
Okay, Missy, she said yes. So now you have to like corral her.
There we go. That's kind of hard to do.
But if you contact me, I will get you in contact with her because sometimes she pays attention to me online.
I think she follows me. I think she follows me on Twitter too. I think I've had some conversations with her on Twitter.
Okay, so just bug her on Twitter then. Leave
Yeah.
the middleman out. I just want to be a part of it. Mad Cat is an honorable lady.
Honorary.
Honorary.
There we go. Well, you might be more ladylike than me anyway. Most people are. I'm rather not ladylike, and I don't care. No, I'm saying you have better manners than me.
Yes, I do. So, you just released a video. Cyber violence, Hannah, until she responds. That's what I had to do. I mean, you know how hard it is to like her to have any free time just to like even do this.
Yeah,
She's
I
a
will
busy
confess.
woman, She does a lot, but she does. Hannah does scratch her balls in public.
Well, and I collect sexually transmitted diseases. But it's so cute.
Which one is that?
I don't know. Chlamydia. There we go. Somewhere around here, there's a little yellow ball of herpes lying around, but I don't know where I left it.
God. Why did you tell me this before my knee was pressing into you? Because it's so tight back here. It's cramped back here. Tight is the wrong word to use.
Oh, sure. First thing you come over to a woman's apartment and you talk about how cramped it is. Because we've been talking about sanitary napkins and stuff, and of course you have to mention it's cramped.
Is chlamydia and the clap the same thing?
I don't know, actually, that one.
I don't know either. I think it is, but all right. So let's go ahead and move on because I really don't want to discuss poo, and I regret bringing it up as a subject. But you just released a video,
I sure did.
which I had the pleasure of watching. Responding to Bering's video, and when I was watching it, I had a few thoughts on it. Not that I disagreed with you in any way, but I thought maybe there were some more things to discuss about the brilliant points that you made. And one of the first thoughts, because for anyone who doesn't know, you definitely should go watch the video if you can. Bering asked basically, does a woman have the right to get drunk and have sex while drunk? He asked a few other questions. Do you want to explain that real quick, or?
Well, he talked about, first of all, there was a video that was played, and then the video sort of gave a little scenario where, a college student comes back to his room drunk with a drunk girl, and the roommate sort of corrals the two of them, and talks them into not sleeping together by making the judgmental statement that some guys take advantage of drunk freshmen. So it's already a statement that men are accountable when they're drunk, but women are not accountable when they're drunk. And anything a woman does while she's drunk, the guy that she's with is accountable for that. And so it's taking advantage if he lets her do what she wants when she's drunk. And he asked, in light of feminists claiming that it's rape if a man has sex with a drunk girl, even if he's also drunk, do women have the right to get really drunk and have sex? And is there any other circumstance that is completely legal from beginning to end, but afterwards one person can rescind their consent for it and it becomes illegal? And I talked about both. There was somebody that brought up a really good point in one of the comments of my videos. They mentioned another thing that I didn't talk about, and I think I can get those comments up here. But that's the basic thing. So I made a video giving a couple of answers to both of those questions, and the question that was sort of unasked by presenting the video as well.
So yeah, we won't spoil that too much because you should definitely go see the video on that. I was thinking of one, the game of tag. Both boys and girls could play a game of tag, and it is legitimate. And then a girl can later say, I didn't actually consent to tag, and the boy could get in trouble for that.
Well, that's true. That's true. Actually, anything that involves physical contact. Feminist activism has made it so that anything that involves physical contact, a girl can later come back and say a guy did something malicious to her, and he has a rough time proving otherwise. He's stuck proving himself innocent. She doesn't have to prove him guilty. He's guilty by insinuation. So
Missy J just asked a question. If you could go back there real quick, and I want to start with that question before I ask my question. As soon as she stays still long enough, why do people always assume it's men taking advantage? And I don't know if she's specifically asking this for you, but I think I would love to hear what you think on that subject.
I think it's because people don't think women have any agency. I think it's because people do not consider women's actions to have the degree of impact that men's actions have. And they don't consider women to have the capability of decision making and the wisdom that men have. It's really pretty much the idea that a woman is not responsible for what she does. And it hurts men more than it hurts women. It becomes an attack on men, even though it's treating women as something less, because it's treating men that by default, they are responsible and they are accountable simply because the woman involved is not. That's basically why. And nobody considers the fact that maybe a man might be too drunk to consent. In fact, there was a news story a while back where a woman a co-ed admitted that she had taken advantage of a guy's drunk condition. He was not only, if I recall correctly, he was not only too drunk to consent, he was passed out.
Yes.
And then she was embarrassed that she had done it, and she made an accusation against him, and he got kicked out of his university for committing an act while unconscious.
She actually went off and had sex with someone else directly after that too, which certainly doesn't fit the narrative that if someone is raped that they're unable to really do anything.
No, it definitely doesn't fit the narrative that she was so traumatized that she couldn't be touched. Obviously she wasn't, because she went off and was touched. So, I think she's a little touched to begin with, but that's a different use of the word.
Okay, so take a few things from the chat, then I'll ask my question, and then we can look at the comment that you're referring to. Polaris, Hannah, you're supposed to know everything. Well, she's not God. I mean, she's a goddess. I mean, she's very beautiful. But just keep complimenting her, and we'll turn her really bright red.
Oh, because the lack of air conditioning isn't doing that already.
Okay, Joe Kim, I imagine your coming meetup as Bilderberg Light. Also call me Jim from now on.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what any of that means other than the Jim part.
The Bilderberg group is those super wealthy, powerful people that supposedly are behind everything in the world. They supposedly control everything in the world. And so they get a lot of coverage when they meet, but nobody actually is allowed to talk about what goes on in their meetings. It's supposed to be a big secret and everything that everybody knows about and is intimidated by.
What happens at Hannah's meetup stays in Hannah's meetup.
I guess that makes us the mini oligarchy, as opposed to the Bilderberg oligarchy.
So Polaris says people love women and hate men. People will protect misbehaving women the same way they defend misbehaving celebrities. That's very true. The only way to solve the problem is to destroy the earth. Well, that's a little bit too far. Could we just rape the earth?
Well, we can. I suppose we could call Marvin the Martian. He might help with that. But
Or Nephenor. He's always talking about doing it.
yeah, that's true. I don't know if Nephenor has a space modulator though.
He doesn't really talk about what's on his spaceship, only that he has one. I think it's not that great. That's why he doesn't talk about it. Polaris, Justicar talked of a case where a woman was too drunk to consent, but was somehow still able to cross the street to a neighbor's house and call the police.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. And this is something that I actually looked up the laws related to being too drunk to consent. I looked the law up on that in response to a Reddit discussion probably about 3 years ago now. And the advice that is given to prosecutors by a national organization, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but there's a national organization that prosecuting attorneys generally belong to, that is like the go-to, this is how you interpret the law, this is how you try this type of case and everything. And one of the standards that they've always used in the past to determine if a person is too drunk to consent to sexual contact is if they are able to get up and move under their own power, and if they are able to target an action. I am going to do this thing, and then execute that action, and do it without fumbling all over the place, without getting so distracted from what they were doing by the nearest thing that they stop and deal with that instead, and things like that. And of course, another one is the ability to talk. If you can't understand anything they're saying because the alcohol has impaired their ability to speak, they're probably too drunk to consent. If they can't keep track of the conversation, even if you keep bringing them back to it and so on, they're probably too drunk to consent. Not to be confused with honey badger wandering, where we just go off on a tangent. But those are all things that were standards. And under those standards, that act might have, in a normal case, in an older case, that act might have undermined the prosecution, because she was able to just get up and go call the cops right afterwards. But if what is this? The judge did not like the idea of the accused claiming innocence and having the defense prove their case. Oh yeah. And that's another one. We have a situation now where we have judges actually criticizing due process and being taken seriously. That's incredibly dangerous. And we'll have to look up the video, but I don't think we're going to do it right now, are we? But yeah, no, that situation, if she was able to, right after the fact, get up and walk over across the street and call the cops, then she wasn't too drunk to consent. At least not by old legal standards. By modern legal standards, she might have been.
So the one thought that I was having when I was watching your video is, if a woman can have sex and then later say that she couldn't have consented, or that she regrets it and therefore the consent is null and void, if she can just change her consent, did she really have the ability to give consent in the first place?
Not really, because if it's not something that can be trusted, just like if you can sign a contract and then say, but I'm not going to uphold this, is it really a contract? And I would compare it to an experience that my mother had. She owned a building in a different community than where we lived, and she rented it out. It was a house, but she rented it out as office space. And she rented office space to 2 or 3 different companies, and a branch of the military put an office in that office space. Now, the lease agreement said that either party was required to give a certain number of days notice in order to end the business relationship. The military pulled out in the middle of the night without warning and without notice. And they just picked up stakes and left. And, mom was warned by another individual in the vicinity that this was happening. And she went to talk to the guy, and she contacted the contact number afterwards. And she's like, "You can't do this. We have a contract." And he said, "No, you have a contract. We can hold you to it. We're the government. You can't hold us to it," which means there's no contract. And that's the same thing that happens with consent. A woman can hold a man to having to seek her consent, and at the same time, even if she gives it, she can't be held to the fact that she did. So is it really consent? No, it's not.
Yeah, that was about the thought that I had on it. Polaris is criticizing me that I can only have one thought at a time. This is interview with Hannah, not Hannah interviewing me. I'm keeping her talking. I have more than one thought all the time. I just only say them one at a time.
Polaris has a question. Yes, actually, to a degree.
What's the question?
The government broke their contract, he says. Is this person in question Native American? Well, yes, partly. We are. And I think everybody knows it as Mohawk. There is actually another name that's more accurate, that I can never pronounce correctly, and I'm not going to try right now. But if you look up the Native American word for Mohawk, because Mohawk was actually the word that the English used, and they took it from the name used for the tribe by another tribe that they were at war with. So, but yeah, so it was, I haven't thought of it that way, because the U.S. government breaks contracts with all of its citizens and all of its non-citizens, that live here, and people that don't live here too. So it's a sad thing to say, but this is another example of the U.S. government breaking its contract with Native Americans.
Well, no, I think that's a really good example that you're using, because when you give consent, it's a contract you're basically creating, saying that you both want it. Now, as we know, consent is not always verbal, despite what feminists have told us. But, we can have nonverbal consent when it comes to sex. If a woman takes off all of her clothes and says, basically does this, we know she wants to get busy. But she never actually said, yes, I want to have sex. Of course, the way feminists treat it is you have to ask every step of the way. Hannah, can I touch your shoulder? Hannah, can I look at you? Hannah, can I...
Stare rape.
So the fact that, a woman can later say, oh, well, I didn't actually consent to it. And even if she did consent, like saying, yes, I want to have sex with you, because there was an article I did where a woman says that even if she says, yes, I want to have sex with you, but she in her mind doesn't want to, it's still rape. And it's like, you gave consent, you did everything that was required for consent by feminist standards, and you're still claiming that it was rape. And this is the problem with feminism, is there's no consistency, first and foremost. But when you make an agreement to something, you've got to stay to that agreement, and being able to rescind it and say oh, I was crossing my fingers the whole time, I didn't actually mean it, makes you very dishonest, first and foremost. But it means that women, it hurts women, because it's saying that women don't have the capability to give consent at all.
Yeah. And it not only does it hurt women by saying that they don't have the ability to give consent, but it also hurts women by saying that women are foolish and stupid. Because if you think about it, it's basically saying that women never know what they want. Now, that makes a good joke. I mean, we joke about that all the time, even to the point of that old adage, a woman's prerogative is to change her mind. which is essentially a statement that women never make up their minds because we don't know what we want. And we're even exempt from having to know what we want. You know, that's all kind of insulting when you really think about it. But I still think it presents the biggest threat of all to men, because then they can't know what they're supposed to do. And the reality is, feminists compare sex to a contract, but they're wrong. You don't make a contract to get into a fist fight. You don't make a contract to attend an event together. You don't make a contract to listen if somebody sings to you. You know, none of that is a contract. It's all choices, and it's active choices. It's not something that you lay out and then you do it. It's something that you lay out while you're doing it. And so I don't like the consent standard because of that. I think that when we discuss sexual violence, we should be discussing a refusal standard. Sexual violence is the act of contravening somebody's right to refuse or their ability to refuse sexual contact. And rape is the active, deliberate choice to contravene somebody's right or ability to refuse intercourse. And, you know, if they're going to base it on penetration, then it should go both ways. If you're forcibly penetrated, you've been raped. If you're forced to penetrate, you've been raped. But it should be about being forced, or it should be about being coerced using threat of force. You know, not just persuasion, not just seduction, but actual threats, actual force, actual things that people are compelled to, you know, to abandon a potential decision because the consequences are so great that they cannot tolerate them. You know, being hit, being starved, being, you know, publicly humiliated, being thrown in jail, being falsely accused of a crime. There are men who have been raped by women using false accusations as a threat. I'll say you raped me. You know, that is the deliberate contravention of his right to refuse. It's not about consent at that moment. It's about taking action to prevent someone from saying no. And I like the no means no standard. You say no, it means no. And you shouldn't say no if you don't mean no. You know, communication is actually good. But this idea that communication is meaningless and then that nonverbal communication carries no weight, that's bullshit. And it's not there to help. It's not there to make things easier for men and women. It's not there to make things safer for anybody. It's only there to make it easier to accuse a man of rape and make it stick, even if he didn't do it.
So I do have a response to that, but this is kind of funny in the chat. I want to read this. Warped Reflection informs us that black cats are bad luck, which Polaris says big black cats are BBC. And then goes on to say that white women really love big black cats. Well, I'm a mad cat and I'm wearing all black right now. So
there we
go. So one thing that I hear as a defense to what you're saying is, what if a woman, or actually, let's not even put gender into this. What if the person is too afraid to say no?
Then they shouldn't be dating. They shouldn't be dating. If they're just too afraid to say no on their own with nothing done by the other person, they're not mature enough to date.
Well, because it's like there can be a situation where you're afraid that if you say no, the person could hurt you.
Well, that's a threat of violence, right? I already covered that.
Well, if it's not implicit that you threaten me with violence, but if we were to have sex, oh God, thank you. If we were to have sex and, well, we were about to have sex, but then I felt like if I said no to you, you could chop off my penis. So I say yes, even though I can't really say anything specific about what you have done to imply that, but I fear that you could do that. So I say yes as a response to that.
Mm-hmm.
How does that fit in with all of that?
That would be you doing that to yourself. That would not be like, if we made this situation, it doesn't matter which sex we're talking about. We make this a situation where a person's internal monologue defines the other person's actions, then we can make somebody guilty of anything. I can make you guilty of conspiracy to commit a murder if I become afraid that you're going to kill me for disagreeing with you. I can say, I've been coerced into agreeing with Mad Cat because he threatened to kill me. And if you say, well, no, I didn't. And I say, well, but I was afraid. It doesn't make you a murderer. It doesn't make you a violent person at all. And it doesn't make a man or a woman a violent person if an individual's internal monologue, their own decision-making, and their own trumped up fears that, like, if you can't say why you're afraid of something, it's probably because the other person hasn't done anything to you. I'm not afraid of feminists, even though I think they're a bunch of assholes in mass, which is why I say feminism is shit. But I'm not afraid of them because none of them have actually done anything to me. The most I've faced is one small group threatening to make a false accusation to Child Protective Services against me. And they never actually did it because I took measures to keep it from happening. And they didn't stop me from talking. They just, gave me motivation to speak a different way than I was originally. To go about the same conversation and make the same points, say the same things, but with a little self-protection. And as far as I'm concerned, the people who did that are responsible for it, not every feminist walking down the street. Even though I will disagree with their ideology, even though I will say they're all responsible for the feminist lobby, that they don't stop from passing discriminatory laws, it would be my internal monologue and my responsibility if I said all feminists are scary because some feminists threatened me. And it's the same thing in bed. If a woman decides that she's too afraid to say no because she knows there are men who are violent, or if a guy decides that he's too afraid to say no because he knows that there are women that are violent, or women that use false accusations to force men to do what they want, that's on the individual. That's not on the other person. And it doesn't make the other person a rapist.
So I want to take a comment from Warped Reflection. She has a very good thing. I think it's worth discussing. I know a girl in my area who was underage, but the guy thought she was legal. He finished with her and found out. She threatened to go to the police about him fucking her underage if he didn't continue the relationship. And that's, I mean, nowadays it's almost like a 13-year-old girl could pass for 20. In fact, one of the people I was talking to, it might have been Modern Medusa or Cassie, was talking about this, where she had a friend that was 13 that passed this 20, got into clubs and had sex all the time. And it's like, I think this kind of goes along with the concept of consent, that we're supposed to know, like, as men, by legal standards, we're supposed to always know whether or not a woman is of age, even if she has a fake ID. Even if other people vouch for her, we're supposed to know she's of age. We're also supposed to know if she really wants to have sex, even if she says, yes, I want to have sex, and doesn't actually want it, because she can later rescind it and say that she really didn't want to. We're supposed to know ahead of time what it is that she really wants.
Right.
And so,
well, there is a concept in criminal law. Karen mentions it all the time. She's the one actually had to explain to me how to pronounce it, because I'm horrible with Latin. And it's called mens rea. And the definition of mens rea is the intention or knowledge of wrongdoing that constitutes part of a crime, as opposed to the action or conduct of the accused. Now, what that basically means is, in order for certain crimes, like the difference between manslaughter and murder, in order for certain crimes to be labeled what they are, you have to demonstrate, as a prosecutor, you have to demonstrate mens rea. If you cannot demonstrate mens rea, you cannot convict somebody of murder. You might still be able to convict them of manslaughter, but you can't convict him of murder. And I think that should be applied to sexual violence as well. It is unequivocally wrong to knowingly and willingly have sex with someone who is too young to understand what they're getting themselves into. The same way that it would be wrong like that to have sex with somebody whose intellectual disability has removed their capacity to understand, or prevented them from developing a capacity to understand what they're getting into. Somebody who maybe has the mind of a 5-year-old or the mind of an 8-year-old or something like that. You wouldn't do that to somebody as an ethical person or as a moral person. And there has to be a law against it, simply to protect people as they grow up, or if they never reach that point. That's just the way we are with laws. And there has to be a law simply because there are always going to be people who don't recognize that. They don't recognize the relationship between maturity and sexual contact, and rightness and wrongness within that. But that being said, tricking somebody by lying about your age, especially if you're able to present evidence that can get you into a club, because nowadays, it didn't used to be this way, but nowadays they generally check IDs. You walk into a club, they check your ID to see if you're over 21 or under 21. And if you're over 18 or under 18. And you can't get in if you're under 18. If you get in and you're over 18, but you're under 21, they still stamp you that you can't be sold alcohol. And they have to do that to keep their alcohol license. So if a 13-year-old girl is getting into clubs, that means she's using a fake ID. That means she's not just lying about her age, but she's presenting physical evidence of that lie. And it's being accepted by people who check IDs. Now, obviously, they're not checking very hard because there's a lot of ways to spot a fake ID. But the word of the bar, basically, that they've got only 18 and up inside, is evidence to the attendee that, that if they run into somebody in there, they're running into an adult. So clearly, mens rea is not met in that situation. The most that a person should be in trouble for after that is being careless, and in that situation, I don't think that should be considered a crime. In fact, if you lie to get into a bar when you're 13 years old, you should be considered an unruly child. That should be considered a commission of the act of fraud, because you lied to get something that would not have been given to you if they had known the truth. And if you lie about your age and entice somebody to commit any other crime, you can be convicted of a crime for that. And I think that would be a situation, with youth. I don't think that penalties should necessarily be the same as they are for adults. Locking kids up doesn't necessarily address the issues that cause them to create crimes. In fact, locking adults up doesn't really either. And I think there should be more effort toward teaching kids, instead of just punishing them. And I think the same thing should be true with adults to a degree.
We're kind of going on a tangent, and we don't have too much time. I want to take one more question from the chat, and then, I promise to look at your comment.
We can skip the comment, but what I wanted to point out on this, basically what I wanted to point out on this is, let's see if I can get it back. When you extend criminal penalty to the point where a person has no way to avoid committing the crime except to take extraordinary measures and not live a normal life for fear that somebody's going to trick them into it, you're actually taking a destructive measure against society. So I think that case, is damaging to everybody. No. I had something else I was going to say, but I can't really get it back.
Well, maybe if you rub it a little bit,
it'll swell up.
Yeah. I need to go back into the chat because. So Polaris says, I know a feminist who works for a website that sells self-defense supplies specifically for women. How do you feel about this? Now, Warped Reflection asked, like pepper spray and stuff like guns and stuff. God, I hate stuff. Polaris responds, pepper spray stuff. I don't think they jump through the hoops of selling guns in California. So I guess the question is, how do you feel about, I would love to go on one of your live streams, Polaris. Sorry. How do you feel about the idea of selling defensive weapons specifically to women?
Well, I think it's kind of bullshit because men face a lot more violence than women do. And like the vast majority of victims of violent crime, especially murder, are men. And I think there's another problem with selling, besides the fact that men need them more, with selling self-defense items just for women. Just because you buy an item that's labeled for self-defense doesn't mean that you know how to use it, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be very defensive for you. One of the problems with a lot of women is that they think that if they just have a can of pepper spray in their hand, they're going to be able to defend themselves. One of the biggest risks with carrying an item around and relying on that item for self-defense is if you are attacked by somebody, that your attacker is going to take it away from you and use it against you. So this is actually something I was talking about offline the other day. I don't think that women should be singled out as needing self-defense, and I don't think that it's appropriate for not that it should be illegal or anything like it is in the UK, but I don't think it's appropriate for companies to sell items as self-defense items without offering some sort of education to go with them. And I think it would have been a beneficial thing for U.S. citizens if ROTC, which is some military training, were a mandatory part of public education and not just something that gets offered around military bases. If people knew how to defend themselves in general, I think there would be a lot less crime. It'd be a lot scarier to try to attack somebody if they might kick your ass for it, So, no, I think the whole idea of targeting women specifically and only as customers for self-defense items is just flat out stupid. It's a good marketing technique. It's more likely to sell more products because women buy more stuff, but it's stupid.
I mean, I think they sell pink brass knuckles, so, but to me, it sounds more like fear mongering, trying to sell people something on the idea of you could be attacked one day and these things are going to help you. And all it's doing is it was like what you're saying with, a man would have to be paranoid about any woman he talks to.
Yeah.
That he would have to be extra vigilant just to make sure that the girl was above age, just to make sure that she wanted to have sex, and it would be destructive for society. And I think that selling a product specifically to women and trying to make them afraid that they may have to use it one day is along the same lines.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, it goes along the lines of, I think it was #YesAllWomen that put forth the idea that if women were afraid, that defined what kind of character men had. Men must be violent because women are afraid of them. Well, that's not actually true.
And as Polaris says, if the world was like Shaolin soccer, everyone knows Kung Fu.
There we go. Yeah, that would actually be kind of cool.
Yeah.
It would make a lot of things in life easier.
It would make soccer more interesting. Yeah. Boo, I know, most popular sport in the world, but I fucking hate it. It bores the hell out of me. At least football, has some more interest. Okay, sorry. Enough insulting the world for one day.
Yeah, well, the thing I liked about that movie, actually, I liked a lot of things about that movie, but it was kind of neat that they continued the joke of how it makes everything easier, and they used it in everyday life for little things like mopping the floor and stuff like that. So, yeah, no, I like that movie.
Well, as Jackie Chan told us in Karate Kid, everything Kung Fu.
Yeah, everything Kung Fu.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and come to a close. We got about 10 more minutes left.
No.
Well, I mean, that's not really a question for you, but more of a statement. Okay, so what she's referring to is I have two notes on my screen, but we've kind of already said this. That if a woman admitted about lying about rape, one of the main problems with that is it can destroy a man's reputation, can destroy a man's life, but he could also be required to register as a sex offender. And even if a woman later says, hey, I was lying about the whole thing, I just didn't want to tell my father, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, what have you, it's actually difficult to get off the registered sex offender list. That even if a man is innocent of the crime, he may still be registered as a sex offender for quite some time, which with registered sex offender list, you have to tell everyone in your neighborhood that you're a registered sex offender. And most of the time, when people hear a registered sex offender, they think it's because you had sex with a minor. Even if it's just, rape with an adult, they'll think, oh, well, you must be a pedophile. Also, it can affect your employment, your jobs. Employers may decide not to hire you because you're a registered sex offender. The movie Bad Bosses, I think it was,
I don't know.
Had this element where like Charlie Day played a character who urinated in a park and it was at nighttime too, but was required to register as a sex offender. And the only job he could get was with a dentist who coerced him into sex, even though he didn't want to have sex.
Yeah. I worked with a guy. I did a 30-day stint as a telemarketer. Really sucked. I'm not cut out for that. But I worked with a guy in that job that the reason that he was in that job and not in something like a STEM profession was because a girl peeked into the windows of his house while standing on his property without his consent, and then said that she saw his penis. And because she was underage, he was convicted of a sex offense against a minor. And, here we have a girl who committed 2 crimes. She trespassed, and she peeked in somebody's windows. So, all the peeping Tom shit, here we have a girl that did it. And instead of getting convicted, she got her victim convicted because he's a guy and he had a penis and she saw it. It's just absolutely ridiculous the way the sex offender list is used. And he had to be on the sex offender list for the rest of his life because she was underage. As far as I'm concerned, the sex offender list is bullshit. Because it doesn't help protect the public. It's undue punishment. It's cruel and unusual punishment for offenders. And the vast majority of offenders on the list didn't do anything to children. And many of them, even after they're acquitted, they end up remaining on the list. If they appeal their case and they're acquitted, they end up remaining on the list. And it gets used to extort money and prevent people from living where they want to live or where they can afford to live. And that's just in the U.S. The UK has it even worse. In the UK, there's some sort of, I can't remember what it's called, sexual violence order or something like that, sexual something order, where a guy has been actually ordered to notify the police within 24 hours ahead of time if he is, or actually a full 24 hours ahead of time if he wants to have sex, because they don't like his sexual preferences. And his sexual preferences aren't children. His sexual preferences aren't anything perverse. His sexual preference is something that is common and is actually so approved that there's novels and things like that sell to hundreds of thousands of women and a movie that's been made about it. But because the judge disapproved, he has to face this order or not a judge, I'm sorry, the police. This didn't even go to court. He has to face this order that he has to notify the police if he's going to have sex. And this can be done to anybody in the UK by police without any kind of due process. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
I'm laughing because Polaris said his sexual preference is missionary. And you know what? I think there's a lot of girls out there that would be disgusted by that because they prefer doggy style. So All right, that's going to wrap it up for us today. We're going to start our closing right now. Once again, I thank you for coming on my channel, but also like letting me into your home. It's a very nice home, I might say. Not that you can tell by the wall, but it's a very nice wall. This is
my wall.
Oh yes. Well, what? So, and I definitely look forward to seeing you this weekend for the event, and looking forward to seeing all the people out there. I know a few people are going to are my fans as well, so I'm excited to meet all of you, but you're mostly there to see her. Just admit it. Is there any final things you want to say, or anything you want to mention the Honey Badger channel, or
Yeah, if for anybody who doesn't know, we're at honeybadgerbrigade.blogspot, or not .blogspot. I think it's just actually I think it's just honeybadgerbrigade.com.
Yes, it is.
So we're at honeybadgerbrigade.com. You can also look us up on YouTube as Honey Badger Radio, and it should just come up in the search, because I don't think there's any other Honey Badger Radio on YouTube. I am on Twitter as @OnerosGrip. I'm not going to spell it. You'll just have to guess.
Just type in if you're in TweetDeck. I don't know if this works for Twitter, but if you're in TweetDeck, just type in @Hannah, and it usually comes up for me if you're following her.
Well, I think I changed my name to Hannah Uncensored after my shadow ban was lifted. So if you look for Hannah Uncensored, that should bring me up too. But yeah, those are the places to find me.
All right, and do you want to briefly talk about the event this weekend? Is it still possible for people to RSVP for that, or?
Yep, if you look on breakingtheglasses.blogspot.com, you'll see the top post currently is about the event. I just named it the Mixed Up Meetup. It's not specific to anyone. It's if you have been involved with Gamergate, I'd love to see you there. If you've been involved as a Honey Badger fan, I'd love to see you there. If you're a fan through A Voice for Men, I'd love to see you there. Pretty much anything. Men's rights activist, anti-censorship advocate, anti-activist. I kind of involve myself in a lot of stuff, I guess. But so basically anybody show up.
If you're a fan of mine, please show up, because I'm a whore and I just love the attention.
And he's going to be there. Liberal Lunacy is going to be there. So if you're one of her fans, please show up. And like I said, the article on the event, it's really short, is on breakingtheglasses.blogspot.com, and it is titled Mixed Up Meetup.
And the event is actually we're going to meet at one location, and then we're going to go to another location, but you have to go to the first location in order to get to the second location. And this is done because there are way too many people out there. I mean, remember what happened with Gamergate in DC? Someone called a bomb threat. So we have to be extra vigilant to make sure that those out there don't try to ruin it.
Yeah, Gamergate in DC had a bomb threat. The ICMI 2014 had threats. We were initially told it was a bomb threat. Then we were told not to say it was a bomb threat, which I don't know if that means it wasn't a bomb threat or not. But we were, our original venue was threatened, and we actually had to change venues. There have been other Gamergate events that were harassed. The venue was harassed into forcing us to change venues. KSU, theirs had to be changed. Sage had to change his venue because of that. So,
and I had to keep Gamergate in Phoenix pretty much an absolute secret, except for those that I could verify. Like, I actually had to have a one-on-one chat with every single person who RSVP'd. And some I did actually turn away because I was a little unsure, which I feel bad about. But yeah, you have to go through these checks and all of this just to make sure that someone's not trying to infiltrate.
Right. And so I chose the start venue as someplace that, honestly, nobody in their right mind is going to make a bomb threat where we're starting out. And we'll start out there. There's 2 times that we're going to meet there. We're going to meet there at noon for anybody that wants to attend that venue and walk around, and it's a free thing. So I mean, we can go in there. It doesn't cost anything to be there. If you want to get food there, there's a possibility of getting food there, and that does cost money. But then we'll meet again outside that venue at 5 p.m. and sort of caravan to the second venue, which it doesn't cost anything to get in there either. But again, it's a place that has food and it has drinks, and those will cost money. So I tried to do something that wasn't going to be very expensive, and that was going to be difficult for somebody to sabotage. Because I just want us to be able to get together and shoot the shit, honestly.
But not in the bathroom.
Yes, not in the bathroom. Let's please do not shoot the bathroom. Be neat and tidy in the bathroom, especially the women.
All right, so that's going to all do it for us today. As always, check out the section down below. I'll try to fill that out. I'm still on vacation, so I'm being lazy right now. But you should still see, follow me on Twitter. You'll have my Twitter access there. Also, check out my Patreon. I am trying to raise money for possible medical costs to try to get better, but also trying to get a better computer so I can make better videos to try to get more money for medical costs. It all works out to just getting medical costs because it sucks having a disability, especially one that could be treated, but it's all out of pocket. If you're not comfortable with doing Patreon, that's perfectly understandable. Also down below is my book. Click on that. The first one is free to download. Hannah has read it. In fact, she proofread the first one. So she's a bit biased, but, do it for Hannah. But the first one is free. Read it. If you like it, please leave an honest review. And if you really liked it, please purchase the next one that comes 1 month after that book, which is the main story, only $2.99. Believe me, you're doing me a big favor if you buy it, because it helps other people find my book a lot easier. So Patreon, if you like what I'm doing and want to leave me a tip, or buy my book, both really help me out a lot.
Also, it's a really neat story. So I think you'll like it.
So anyways, that's going to do it for me today. I once again thank Hannah for coming on my show and being here live. This is a new thing for me. I've never done something live with someone before. So she will be at the event this weekend, and I'll be there with my phone. So I'll be doing little short videos like I did with my trip to Dayton. But anyways, that's going to do it for us today. This is Mad Cat signing out. Now to end this thing, there we go. Yes.